Hey guys, I'm back. I'm also Sarah, and Utah is a pretty weird place. Most people are only getting to see this now after the release of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, but I'm here to set things straight. Yes, my fellow baby gorgeouses, baby gorgi, baby's gorgeous. I am here to tell you about the iconic, the legendary, The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City Season 1. However, since our generation is horrifyingly underrepresented in the Housewives viewership, let's introduce the franchise. The first episode of The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills aired on October 14th, 2010, and the world of reality television and the world of Andy Cohen's bank account have never been the same since. The show followed 7 of Beverly Hills' most rich, influential, and shamelessly public women. Cameras followed these women around everywhere, both individually and in a unit. It was super invasive and also very, very entertaining. Watching a group of very loud people with all the time and money in the world be forced to spend time with each other is a trip. We got to watch their lives, their work, their families, their personal affairs way too closely. And naturally, when everything you've ever done and ever will do becomes public knowledge, some very juicy drama ensues. And me and my mom were definitely not the only ones who enjoyed it. Bravo saw a cash cow in the making, and they followed their capitalistic instincts to great success. Housewives franchises started popping up in every major US city, and also Dubai for some reason. Bravo made their shmoney, but the women also got major promotion for their businesses and eventually their social medias, which leads to some very silly sponsorships. Format-wise, the show sent around a handful of big events like luncheons, dinner parties, launch parties, with a ton of filler in the middle. We genuinely spend several minutes this season watching one of these women make a smoothie with her son. That's the kind of filler we're talking about. And you know what? I still ate it up. And I would love to give you every minute, boring, stupid detail in this season, but because I am kind, I'm going to be focusing on the big events of the season and the drama fests that they are. Speaking of the season, let's meet our cast. First and very least, we have Miss Lisa Barlow.
Here we go, weather. Whitney and Heather, bad weather, tornado, spin the truth, destroy.
I'm getting Lisa over with first because I hate her with a burning passion. Workaholic Lisa Sundance Barlow, owner of Vita Tequila, was born and mostly raised in New York and moved to Salt Lake City when she was in her teens. She's married to her male wife, John Barlow, and has 2 kids with him, Jack and Henry. And I don't like to mom shame because I know that it's hard to be a mom, but Lisa is actually crazy. She puts those capitalism coded, work hard, definition of grit posters above her son's beds, and she makes it very clear that she wants her kids to have a legitimate business. If you are ever one of those kids who sold the duct tape wallets or was a drop shipper for the Japanese erasers, Lisa Barlow would laugh in your face. Her and her husband both encourage and fund her kids' men's grooming line. Yes, their line, Fresh Wolf, produces beard oil, a product that her, at the time, prepubescent children would not have any use for the next decade. Also, based off of John, their dad, I don't think they will ever have a beard that connects. Sorry, John. I really do like John, to be fair. I do like John, but no. Oh yeah! Also, Lisa exclusively feeds herself, her husband, and her children fast food. I am all for parents doing whatever they need to do to keep their kids fed, especially if they have low incomes. But this is not the case for Lisa. Miss Lisa has enough money to have a full-time private chef. Instead, she takes her kids on morning run to Dunkin', McDonald's, Chick-fil-A. And when I say Dunkin', McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, I do not mean Dunkin' one morning, McDonald's the next, Chick-fil-A the day after. No, no, no. You know when you pass a McDonald's and you tell your parents, oh, can we get McDonald's? And they say we have food at home? For Lisa Barlow, this is literally not the case. There is no food at home unless you're counting DoorDash. And it's not just that she'll take you to McDonald's when you ask. It's that you could go, oh my God, I want a Frosty with these McDonald's fries, and she would drive you to Wendy's. And then she would think, hey, I want an iced coffee, drive you to Dunkin'. And while you're there, you might as well get donut holes. That's the kind of morning that Lisa Barlow has every single day. I know I'm really weirdly stuck on this whole fast food thing, but for any other season and any other part of this video, I will not get to talk about it. So I need you to know how much it upsets me.
Stop, you're driving me
on your shoulder.
Seriously?
It's not that difficult. Just not touch it and leave it alone.
Okay, stop.
Meredith Marks, owner of Meredith Marks Jewelry, is new to Salt Lake City. She recently came to the city for business, but this move has had complicated implications for her family and marriage. Meredith's husband, Seth, isn't living full-time in Salt Lake City. He actually spends most of his time with his company in Canton, Ohio. Okay? Ohio, shout out. Okay? Okay, shut up. They're both very insistent that they need to be in the same place for their marriage to work, but neither of them is willing to move, which for Meredith I get. Why would you want to live in Canton? But for Seth, I really don't get if he's that worried about his relationship. This creates a huge rift in their relationship, and it turns out that they got secretly separated before the show starts. And for some reason, this becomes a huge point of contention in the show, obviously for Meredith and her husband, but it somehow gets involved in almost every single one of the dramas of the season. Meredith and Seth have 3 grown-up children together, none of which who are super relevant, but her middle son, Brooks, actually has a weird hand in one of the bigger dramas that last multiple seasons. Whitney Rose, you gorgeous, gorgeous girl. This is allegedly an unpopular opinion, but I love Whitney. We're introduced to Whitney in the messiest way possible. We open to her vow renewal with her husband, Justin, of 10 years. But it turns out that 10 years ago when they got married, it was after a torrid workplace affair. Her and her husband were both married when they started sleeping together at work. Eventually they fell in love, and shockingly, they did the thing that never happens where you actually leave your original partner for the person you're cheating on them with. But I think because they were both married, it actually makes the likelihood higher that that'll happen. They got married and they have 2 kids together, 1 son and 1 daughter. Justin brought a couple of kids from his previous marriage as well, but it's a little hard for Whitney to play stepmommy when at the very least, her stepchildren are 5 years younger than her. Justin is 18 years older than Whitney, which is technically legal. The other big personal issue that Whitney's dealing with this season is her relationship with her father, who's a recovering addict. In the script, I have written daddict. Everyone laugh. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. On a more serious note, Whitney is the last one of his children who is still financially, emotionally supporting this man. Whitney's very obviously struggling with it, and it makes a lot of sense considering she is the only one supporting him along with her husband, and based off of his actions throughout the season.
I'm taking over ordering because these skinny bitches don't know how to order.
If you looked up girl boss in the dictionary, you would just find a picture of Heather Gay. Heather's the founder and owner of Beauty Lab and Laser, which she says she opened to take advantage of the perfectionist culture in Mormonism. Absolutely legendary behavior. I'll talk more specifically about her relationship with the church later, but a big part of her story right now is her transition out of the Mormon in crowd. She was pushed out of that group when she got a divorce. One day her husband divorced her. Ever since, Heather has functionally been a single mother of 3 children, though he does support them financially. I love Heather. She's obviously going through some very major personal change, but it's very, very clear that throughout the entire series, her daughters are the first thing on her mind.
No way.
Mary Cosby is an extremely strange woman. She's the first lady of her church, which was formerly her grandmother's. As a non-Christian, I get very confused about all your little sects. So all I know about Mary Cosby's church is that she's not a Catholic. In my Martin Luther mind, this means she's a Protestant, but I think that's a whole different thing now. So you can look it up. I really don't care. The environment there is very passionate and energetic and definitely a little sketchy. There are some reports that some weird stuff has been happening at Mary's church, which I will neither confirm nor deny because I cannot do that. But on the show, we do hear an audio recording that seemingly is Mary yelling at her congregation for being poor because they didn't get her a big enough birthday present. Moving on. She runs the church with her husband and, get ready for this one, step grandfather, Robert Sr. Allegedly, Mary's grandmother requested that upon her death, her husband, Robert Sr., marry one of her girls. So either Mary or her mom. More on why that is alleged later. The couple has 1 kid, Robert Jr., and Mary has this really weird, controlling, overbearing, like boy-mom relationship with him, and it makes me uncomfortable. She is a wild lady with a wild story, past, present, and hopefully future, or else she wouldn't be Mary Cosby anymore.
I'm going to speak for myself.
It's a mosquito.
If there was a main character of season 1 of The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, it would be Jen Shaw. There's a reason she's at the middle of all these girls. A Tongan Hawaiian woman, Jen Shaw moved from Hawaii to Salt Lake City at a very young age with her family. Jen definitely stands out from the crowd, even among these women. She's super outgoing, super loud, and super quick to anger, which causes a lot of conflict in a show that is prone to conflict already. She's married to her husband, Sharif Coach Shaw. He's the assistant football coach at the University of Utah and is a very busy man, so he's not always at the house. But he has this magic way over Jen that makes her calm, reasonable, and dare I say, sweet. The couple have 2 kids together, and they're both pretty much completely irrelevant to the show, but they seem a happy enough family. You might have noticed that unlike the rest of these women, I haven't told you what Jen does as a job yet. That is because I have no idea. But her goings on at work become very relevant in season 2. But I'm talking about season 1, so it doesn't really matter. All we really know about her job is that it has something to do with marketing, and it is so taxing that for some reason she needs 8 assistants to do everything for her. Wow, do these girls, and probably everyone in the state of Utah, have a complicated relationship with the Mormon church. Of these 6 women, 4 are or have been part of the church, and 3 of them have major issues that have caused them to either leave or be kicked out of the church. The church is a huge part of this season, but also the city of Salt Lake City. So I'm going to give you a brief rundown of what we learn about the Mormon church throughout this season. The Mormon church is a branch of Christianity focused in Utah, with the hub of it being in Salt Lake City. The church's politically correct name is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but I'm not saying all of that. If I'm referring to the church itself, I'll probably either call it the Mormon Church or LDS. If I'm referring to a person within the church, I'm probably just going to call Mormon, or the idea of Mormonism. The church is pretty conservative compared to other religions, from what I know, at least is how they're represented in the United States. For the purposes of today's video, I'll be listing the rules that are relevant to this season. There's no drinking alcohol, no drinking coffee, no sex before marriage, no divorce, and very conservative clothing is required. Unlike other religions where dressing conservatively may be part of the rules but may not be very well defined, the Mormon church has very strict guidelines. In LDS, there are things called garments that cover you from shoulder to knee. They're basically underwear that are just really long, and they help you dress conservatively because you are supposed to cover your garments with whatever clothing you are wearing. I think some people are probably more lax about the whole garments thing because I've seen people who are Mormon dress all sorts of ways, so I'm not 100% sure. Also, another memorable part of the church's history is that they didn't allow Black members until 1978. Of our 6 women, only one of them is actually still Mormon, with the other 3 former Mormons having left or been kicked out because of their lack of ability to stick to the rules or their issues with the rules themselves. Hi, I filmed all of this yesterday and the file got like corrupted, so I'm just gonna do this part. This is not the first accident during the filming of this video. There will be another one right after this, so be so excited that you get to see it. Moving on. Jen Shaw left the Mormon church about 5 years into her marriage. That's when she found out about the whole Black people not being let in until 1978 thing. Jen's husband, along with her 2 boys, are all Black men, and she was very concerned that she was part of a church that would so recently have not allowed them in. In response to that, she decided to leave the church and convert to Islam like her husband. Now, I am not a perfect Muslim. I really shouldn't be one to judge, but Jen Shaw is not a great Muslim either. She drinks more than any of the women, and honestly, her drinking causes 90% of the problems that we're going to talk about today, so that's great. In season 2, I think she mentioned celebrating a Ramadan, but I don't believe it, really. My one wish in this life is for those Muslim podcast boys who hate women to see Jen's version of Islam. I think it would be so shocking and appalling to them that they might just be able to stop speaking. And wouldn't that be what's best for the rest of the world? Yeah. Both Heather and Whitney left for divorce-related reasons. Heather was a born and bred Mormon with pioneer ties, and she was a really good Mormon. She wore her garments, she never drank, never had sex before marriage. She even married someone who was considered Mormon royalty and gave him 3 Mormon daughters. She went to BYU, she did her mission, she's like the Mormon girly. And she stayed in her admittedly miserable marriage out of fidelity for her religion. However, when her husband left, it was sort of a mercy kill for their marriage. Suddenly, Heather was outside of every single social group she had ever existed in for her entire life. She sort of had an identity crisis and went crazy. She even got a DUI, which is awful. In the time since, when she's gotten to calm down, she's had a rethink about all of the ideals that were governing her life for so long. She also questioned the fact that those social systems really weren't there for her anymore, despite the fact that she didn't even want to get divorced. This whole first season sees her very much still conflicted between feeling like a Mormon and having been a Mormon for her whole life, and feeling like an outsider in the those groups that she had always been an insider on. I think Whitney has a much easier time leaving the Mormon church, and that's probably because she left at the same time as her husband. Since she still had that central relationship with her husband intact, I think it must have been easier to get support from each other rather than feeling alone and outside from those other groups. And Whitney seems to be thriving within a non-Mormon environment. She's really coming into her own. She's reclaiming her sexuality. She likes to pole dance. She's like having a blast. And it makes me really happy because it's clear that she is much happier not being a Mormon. She's also very much born and bred Mormon, and she and Heather are actually cousins. So fun fact. Our only currently Mormon housewife is Lisa, but calling Lisa a devout Mormon might upset some of the other girls on this screen. Lisa is what the other girls like to call East Coast Mormon or Mormon 2.0, meaning she doesn't really follow the rules, never went on a mission. She did go to BYU with Heather, but that'll be a point of contention very soon. And she is the owner of Vita Tequila, among other companies that famously produce alcohol. But to Lisa's defense, she says she asks God every morning if it's still okay, and every morning he goes, "Yep, girl, keep girl bossing," or whatever. She dresses pretty provocatively. She still drinks coffee, drinks alcohol, all of those other things. I think this picture of Lisa might be the only one where she's covered neck to toe, so sorry, but just imagine. But these two might not think Lisa's a very good Mormon, but they do think she exemplifies one thing, and that's the shunning culture they talk about. Ever since they both left the church, they feel like Lisa's become a little condescending, a little weird. She seems to want to exclude them out of things and not want to give them the benefit of the doubt anymore. And those two seem to think it's because they got divorced and were pushed out of the church. Everything Lisa says is a dig, and honestly, I believe them because I like them, but you know, it might just not be true. But now that we've got all of that Mormon stuff settled, let's talk about where we stand before the season even starts. Before this first season of The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, we have two sets of best friends on the cast. First is Meredith and Lisa. They seem very close. They've known each other for several years, apparently. They say they're like sisters and people get them mixed up, which they are, both white women with long brown hair that's straight. I'm not that surprised, but I can tell them apart because I've watched them for so long. There doesn't seem to be any tension really between these two. Our next set of best friends is Jen Shaw and Heather. I would say their friendship is more parasitic than anything. More on that later. They've known each other for forever. They're both Utah natives. Heather is unerringly supportive to Jen, and Jen is Jen. Then we've got some plain old friendships, nothing too close. So Lisa is friends with Jen. Jen is friends with Meredith. Ignore this for now. It's for later. I did finish filming this video last night. Meredith, friends with Mary. Mary, friends with Whitney. Whitney, friends with Heather. So everyone's got a friend at least on this board. And then we've got some beefs already before the season even starts. Like we talked about, both Heather and Whitney have beef with Lisa. They think everything she does is really condescending, and fair enough. It might be. It seems sort of mutual, but I don't really know. And then we got this big beef between Mary and Jen. Something happened before the start of the season, which we will talk about shortly, but this has caused this big rift between Mary and Jen, who used to be friends. And with all that out of the way, let's get into the first season of The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Hey guys, I just finished this video and forgot to press record the entire time. So I better do this quickly because I was so excited to be done. Remember that thing I was saying about big events? We're starting before our big event. Heather and Jen are having just a little convo before any big events or anything. They're talking about Lisa, and Heather says, "Hey, I've known Lisa for 20 years. We went to school together. We're friends. We're not super close or anything, but we're friends." Jen takes this information to a hangout that she's having with Meredith and Lisa. She tells Lisa, "Hey, Heather said she knew you." And Lisa goes, "Oh, I don't know her. I don't really know her. I know of her. I don't know her." Jen's like, rude. Okay. But in her head, she's like, "Oh, didn't you guys go to school together? Like, how do you not know her?" And she goes, "Oh, Heather Gay? Oh, she was a good time girl at school." Like, insinuating that she flashed people at school. Heather's not very pleased with that because, you know, she famously had a very restrictive Mormon lifestyle. And if she had rebelled against that, maybe she wouldn't have ended up in a bad marriage. Heather's like, "Jen, she said that we were like sisters earlier. Like, I don't know why she's saying she doesn't know me." And Heather in her head is like, "Oh, classic Lisa, Mormon wife, you know, shunning me out of the group because I am not a perfect Mormon anymore." That leads us into our first big event of the season, which is Meredith's birthday party. Jen is actually the one throwing the party and hosting it at Shaw Chalet, which is her house. She decided she needed to throw Meredith a birthday party. I don't know why. Honestly, at the end, it ended up being a Jen party more than it ever was a Meredith party, but Meredith's fine with this. She's like, "Whatever, girl, pop off." have fun. But we start two pretty big beefs in the middle of this part. First of all, we get to find out why Meredith and Jen are beefing. It turns out that before the season even started, Jen was having some complications. Her aunt was in the hospital and had to get a double amputation. So both of her legs were cut off because of some health issue. Jen was obviously distraught over this, and she goes to her friend Mary and is crying. She gives her a hug. And at some point, Mary says, "Ugh, it smells like hospital in here." Jen is like, okay, that's really rude. I was just in the hospital with my aunt. Like, I don't know why you're even bringing this up. Mary just doesn't think it was that deep, and Jen does think it was that deep. Well, at this party for Meredith, Jen had to invite Mary because she was on Meredith's list because they are friends. So Mary decides, I need to clear the air. She comes up to Jen and she's like, "Hey girl, like, what's up?" And Jen is like, "Hey girl, smells like hospital." But basically she's like, "It really sucked that you said that. I was obviously in a very vulnerable state, especially with hospitals, and like that, it wasn't fun for me." And Mary goes, "I never said that. I never said that." And then Jen sees someone who was there during that interaction. She's like, "Hey girlie." And Miss Girl comes over and she's like, "Yes, you did say that, Mary. Bye." And we never see her again. So Mary at that point cannot say she hasn't said it because other people have confirmed that yes, she has said it. And she goes, "Yeah, I said it. Yes, I said it." And is really proud of it. And she goes like, "I'm not going to apologize for this." Jen, pissed, runs off back to her room because this party is at her house. And she is fuming to Heather and this other girl who thought it was her birthday party and her glam squad. And she's just on one.
Respecting family? Are you kidding me right
just
now?
a dig.
She's in my goddamn mother house.
And Mary decides, this is my opportunity to make this about me. So she comes up to Jen's room and is like, "Hey girl, hey girl." And she basically goes, "I'm sorry. Hospital smells are really sensitive to me because I had 12 surgeries to get my odor glands removed." And Heather's like, "Is that something you can just do? Like, not be stinky anymore?" And Mary's like, "No. It was for some very like serious medical emergency, like maybe hyperhidrosis, like really severe hyperhidrosis. I don't know." Jen sort of half accepts the apology and's like, "Okay, Mary. Okay, Mary." That is obviously not resolved yet. Next, we have this beef between Whitney and Lisa. As we know, at the beginning of the season, we see Whitney's vow renewal to her husband, Justin. But also, while we see her being happy about the vow renewal, we also see that there are bartenders there who are breaking glasses. They're drinking their own alcohol. It's a big mess. Turns out that that alcohol and those bartenders were gifted from Lisa because Lisa, famous alcohol tyrant. Whitney, knowing that these bartenders are Lisa's bartenders, wants to tell Lisa, "Hey, these guys are like ruining things behind your back. I don't want this to be like a surprise to you because it did happen at my party." And Lisa goes, "Are you trying to attack my business?" And if we know one thing about Lisa, it is that before her children, her business is her baby. So this is like a big deal to her. Whitney's confused. She's like, "I was just trying to give you a heads up because these people might ruin your reputation." And Lisa is still taking this as, "You're trying to ruin my reputation, girl." So Lisa leaves this interaction angry. Whitney leaves the interaction confused and upset because like, "Why are you accusing me of stuff like that?" And everyone leaves. Everyone goes home. That's the end of the party. And apparently right after the party, once everyone goes home, Lisa called Whitney and said, "Hey girl, if you ever speak about my business ever again, I will tell everyone that you and your husband are swingers." An important thing that happens before our next event is that Mary invites Whitney, her father, and Meredith to see one of her church meetings, whatever they call. Everyone seems to have a good time. Mary thinks that Whitney's dad will benefit from it because she's been good with other people for addiction. I don't know. But everyone has a good time. No beef there. Our next big event is thrown by Whitney. She throws this massive 1920s party in this speakeasy. It's very cool. Everyone's dressed up in 1920s wear. There's waiters dressed up in 1920s clothes. There's also pole dancers. So Whitney core. Love her. Everyone's invited to the party. Everyone comes. At some point in the night, Meredith and Jen start talking, and Meredith lets her know that she went to Mary's church thing. Jen goes crazy. She's like, "You're trying to be friends with Mary? You're being a bad friend right now because you're trying to be friends with Mary. You know what she did to me, and now you're trying to be friends with her and you claim to be my friend? Mary's a bad friend. You shouldn't want to be friends with her." Meredith does this thing frequently where she goes, "I'm disengaging from the conversation. Bye. I'm disengaging." Which just essentially means she doesn't want to talk about it anymore, which is healthy sometimes and avoiding responsibility other times. But in this situation, fair enough. You're a grown woman. You don't need to hear some other grown woman tell you you can't be friends with a third grown woman.
Thank you, I'm disengaging. I'm not engaging.
However, as Meredith is walking away, Jen yells out for the crowd, "You'd rather be friends with Mary effing Cosby, the grandpa effer?"
Go with Mary, who her grandfather?
And as true as that is, it's also very rude. And It's also very loud, and everyone in the entire place can hear her, including Mary Cosby. Mary Cosby's offended. She's like, girl, okay, thanks. That was a very rude thing to say. Jen is so drunk right now to the point where Heather has to escort her out and call Sharif and go, hey, you need to pick up your wife, bud. She is not doing well. So as Heather is taking Jen out, Jen starts trying to fight Heather, and Heather's like, girl, I'm trying to get you to your husband. Like, calm down.
Jen, you're killing him! Shut the
Eventually, Jen gets in the car, goes home. Everyone else leaves the party. That's how we leave, with this like big, weird tension triangle. Jen, now sober, hungover, sober, decides, wow, Meredith has really betrayed me here. Plus, we have another interaction that makes her think Meredith has definitely betrayed her. Jen and Meredith were just hanging out at her house, planning a sleepover for the next night, when Meredith's son, Brooks, and her daughter, Chloe, I think, walk into the room. And Jen's talking about how they're gonna do high kicks at the sleepover. Brooks asks, what do you mean high kick? And Jen goes, I would show you, but I'd flash you my vagina. Wise choice, don't do it. But then Jen does it anyway and does flash Brooks her vagina. Brooks gets uncomfortable, Chloe gets uncomfortable. They run off and go to Best Buy. The next day, when the sleepover is meant to happen, Brooks comes up to his mom, the infamous smoothie scene, and goes, Jen flashed me her vagina last night. It made me so uncomfortable. Obviously, me and Chloe were so uncomfortable, we had to leave the room and go to Best Buy. So I don't want her around the house anymore. Meredith, to her credit, goes, yep, that's totally fine. She calls Jen, she cancels. Jen takes this cancellation plus the fact that she went to Mary's church as like a super sign. And she's like, oh, okay, I see how we are here. I see it. I get it. I get it. I get it. And as revenge, she decides, I'm gonna tell one of Meredith's little secrets, girly. Meredith and her husband are having marital issues. We know they're separated already, but there's only one other person who knows, and that is Jen. Obviously, Meredith told her this in confidence. Please don't tell anybody. Jen goes, obviously, I won't. But Meredith has made her upset, so she decides to tell Heather and Whitney. Not only that Meredith and Seth are separated, but also that Meredith is sleeping with other people. That's all simmering. Nobody really knows this is happening yet. But Mary says, okay, I've had a bad night. I need to call and smooth this over. So she invites all of these women to a Met Gala themed luncheon in the middle of the day. Dressing full Met Gala is a choice. And she includes Jen in this invitation too. So she invites all the girls, they all show up. Everything seems to be fine. Obviously, Jen's not happy, but she's not being loud about it. That's okay until Mary decides to therapize the group. She asks everyone, tell the group something that they might not know about you. And once it gets to Jen's turn, she's like, one thing you don't know about me is that I'm a real ride or die friend. Like sometimes I can really go at my friends, but that's because I care about them. Mary knows who she's talking about, and so does everyone else because we all heard what happened at the party. And Mary goes, don't you understand though how that can come off aggressive sometimes? Jen gets pissed, starts yelling, leaves. Heather, poor Heather, goes after her. It's like, Jen, you can't leave. You have to go in there and talk to Mary. So they come back. And Mary this whole time's like, leave, girl. If you want to leave, I will happily see you leave. But when Jen comes back in, Mary calls her a hoodlum or ghetto or something. Jen goes off. She's like, oh, Mary, you're a racist. And she tells us that Mary once said, if I was at a 7-Eleven and I saw a group of black men in front of the 7-Eleven, I would leave and go to a different 7-Eleven. Jen is offended because that could be my sons or my husband. That's really awful to say. What about black men is more threatening than white men? Like, that's problematic. And then Mary calls her a hoodlum, and that's like another kind of racially coded word. And Jen is just like, you're being racist. You think you're better than other black people, blah, 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 blah. Jen is not a black person, and neither am I. So it's not really my job to tell you whether or not it is actually racist. I will leave that to whoever who is not me. But I do think it's a little weird, the 7-Eleven comment. And I don't love the word ghetto, but it's not my word. So Mary's like, you have to get out of my luncheon. Bye. Bye. And as Jen's walking out, Mary goes, and leave your gifts. Make sure you leave your gifts. I'm not paying for gifts for you. Jen had left her gifts, so it was fine. So despite thinking maybe we had some resolution or maybe we could get some resolution, nobody's happy with anybody. Before our next big event, we have one really big important conversation happening. Mary is really frustrated because after the luncheon, it seemed like nobody was willing to stand up to Jen, but after Jen leaves, everyone's willing to stand up to Mary. In response to this, she calls up Whitney and is like, everyone will stand up to me, but not Jen, because they're scared of her. Meredith and Lisa told me themselves that they are scared of Jen. Whitney hears this and she wants to be friends with Jen because there's some sort of social clout attached to being friends with Jen. And she thinks, people are talking behind her back. If I tell her, she will be happy with me because I'm stopping the rumor there. She calls Heather, and Heather's like, yes, we will do this together at our next big event. The next big event is Sharif, Jen's husband's birthday party. Jen is throwing a party for him for the first time in over 20 years and wants this party to be perfect. She wants to make sure he has a great time. It's going to be at Topgolf because he loves golf. It's going to be 90s hip hop theme because he loves 90s hip hop. And there's going to be good food. She's flying in everybody he's ever known ever. It's going to be great. She calls Whitney the morning of the party and tells her how important it is to her that this party is happening. She tells her, hey, I haven't thrown a party for Sharif in ages, and it's not just that. It's also that we've not been spending much time together. He's super busy doing recruiting stuff, so I can't see him all the time, and it feels like we don't do much when he is here, so I want to make sure this is really special for him. Whitney's like, yeah, totally. I totally get it. Yeah. If my husband wasn't around all the time, I would want to do special things for him too. So Jen's going into this party with a good mood. That night, we arrive at the party. Everyone shows up except for Mary. Mary was obviously not invited. These two don't show up with good 90s hip hop outfits, and they end up being really boring for the whole party. Boring. Obvious. Sorry. These three do. They show up, they show out. She shows up in a Beyonce, like, Super Bowl outfit. It was very intense. Not in the 90s, but, you know, honestly, the party is going pretty well. These two are having a dance competition, and Whitney's, like, twerking while doing a handstand, and Lisa from the corner is like, maybe she shouldn't be doing that in front of someone else's husband. But the thing is, she's doing a handstand. She's holding her legs open so she can twerk better. Like, these two are having a good time. They're being friends. If things stopped there, it would have been great. But at some point, Jen goes out on the patio. It is quieter out there. It's a very loud party. There's a lot of people, but Sharif is happy. So that's great. Whitney and Heather decide this is our time. This is the time to do it. So they both come up to Jen, and Whitney's like, we have something to tell you, Jen. But she's having a hard time saying it. So eventually Heather just goes, Lisa and Meredith, tell Mary they're scared of you. Jen hears the word Mary Cosby. She goes crazy. She's like, why are you listening to Mary? Mary is BS. This is all BS. She's lying to you. Why are you listening to her? Why are you friends with her? Blah, 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 blah.
Why is you guys came to me and said they were saying something about me. I'm over the bullshit. What the is going on?
Lisa and Meredith's Jen senses are tingling, and they're like, oh no. We hear Jen yelling, we need to go over there. They come up to Jen and they're like, what is going on? Jen tells them, or Whitney tells them, I don't remember. And Whitney comes up to them and she's like, oh, by the way, Meredith, Jen's been talking about your marriage and saying you're cheating on your husband. I just had to tell you that. Bye. She's so funny. She's so fun. Everyone is trying to avoid Jen, but Jen is going crazy. People are trying to explain to her she's going crazy, crazy, crazy. She's holding a glass. She throws it.
Mary is crazy. Shut the up about Mary.
Okay, Jen.
Shut up about Mary. I don't give a Do you understand? Her.
Sharif had already noticed the arguing and the yelling, but I think this glass throwing thing was a big deal for everybody. Do I think it is the worst thing in the world to throw a glass at nobody? She threw it at the ground, to be fair. No, but would I want an angry Jen Shaw throwing sharp things at me? I'd be terrified. As soon as that glass is thrown, though, Sharif is in there. He gets her out. He puts her in the backseat of a car with their younger child, and the poor kid is like, hey, Mom, calm down. It's not that big of a deal. And she's like, ah! He's like, Mama, please be quiet. Please stop. And she goes, fine. And she does stop. Good. I'm glad his appeal to her worked, at least.
These mother bitches, let's go. Get my purse. Get my phone. Let's go.
Let's go. Come this way.
We wake up the next morning. We're all sober, maybe hungover, but sober. And if anybody needs a debrief and a reconciliation, it's Miss Whitney Rose. Whitney's aware that she has now pissed off half of the group here and that she needs to say sorry to everyone. Jen's obviously the more notable threat at the moment and the one she wants to get over with now. So she decides, hey, I'm gonna call up Heather and Jen. We're gonna do a little spa day and maybe try and have a little debrief, and I can say I'm sorry and we can talk about it. Calls Heather. Heather says, great idea. She calls Jen, and Jen's like, this better be 24-karat gold mask kind of spa day. But it is 2 hours out from where they live, and it's in the middle of the wilderness, and it's like a hot springs, but it's not a hot springs. It's a hot springs that feeds into these old bathtubs, and definitely not what Jen was expecting or wanting. So that was a great start. Jen gets in her little bathtub already annoyed, and Whitney and Heather start trying to talk to her like, hey, it was bad timing, but also it was out of pocket for you to throw that glass. It was dangerous. You shouldn't have done that. And you might have overreacted a little bit. Like, that wasn't fair to Sharif. Jen, who thought she was here to hear an overt apology with nothing else, gets out of her bathtub, tries to splash a cameraman, walks away.
I married this up because of that night. Sharif hasn't been home since Saturday, so I'm so glad that you were able to. Yes! Embarrassed. Like, I trusted you guys as my friends, and Whitney roll your mother eyes and look over there one more time, I'll drown you, bitch. That's what happens when you film me in the bathtub. Jen,
You're calm
in the
with Jen.
Heather has a little conversation with Whitney and is like, hey girl, sometimes you have to just apologize to Jen without asking for anything else, or else Jen will not listen to you. Great friend, besties, besties, besties. Somehow we get Jen back in the bathtub, and the girls go, hey, we are so sorry. That was really poor timing of us. We didn't mean it, but like, we are still very sorry. And Jen goes, yeah, this has ruined my marriage. It turns out that ever since that night, Sharif has not spoken to Jen because he has been so angry, upset, and embarrassed that she would do something like that at this birthday party for him. And considering the fact that she never really sees him anyways, if he's at home and not speaking to her, that's kind of a big deal. The girls go, you know what, I'm so sorry, like I didn't know it would affect your marriage like that, we didn't know you would react like that, blah 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 blah. Jen eventually accepts Whitney's apology and says, hey, I know you didn't mean it. Everyone leaves. We think we're good. Miss Whitney still has a lot of reconciliation to do. So she says, hey, Justin, would you mind taking care of the kids for a weekend so we can go on a girls' trip to Las Vegas? Justin agrees, everything's fine. She calls everybody. We get a yes from Heather, a yes from Jen, a yes from Meredith. We get a very overt no from Mary. She said, if Jen is coming to on that trip, I will not be there. I will not be going on a Jen Shaw vacation. That's not for me. From Lisa, we get a maybe, a very like cold maybe. These four are getting on a flight to go to Las Vegas, to go to their hotel. They land, they get in their shuttle bus. And by shuttle bus, I mean like fancy, like it's theirs for the weekend kind of shuttle bus. While there, Whitney gets a text from Lisa, hey girl, when is my hotel room ready? Whitney goes, I didn't know you were coming. You never gave me any confirmation. What if I, hadn't booked the hotel room? But Whitney's like, I know I am officially the one who has to apologize here anyway, so I sort of get it. Says, hey, like, why are you here? She goes, oh, I was already here for work. I would just meet you guys like later today. Fine. She texts her where they're staying. That's fine. Whitney's really all about the team bonding at the moment, so she has the whole day planned out, and she's decided to do a little excursion where they're gonna drive race cars. Ooh. She proposes this to the group. These two are very excited. Jen says, oh no, me and Heather have plans. We're going on a shopping spree. More on that later. Whitney, Meredith, Lisa all go to the race car driving. Lisa loves to talk. Oh my god, me and Richard Gere's wife, we go like race car driving all the time and we love his team, blah, 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 blah. She's driving maybe 90. Maybe. These two having a blast. She's also having a blast, just very slowly. They get out of their cars and Whitney comes up to them and she's like, hey, I am so sorry. I spoke about you behind your backs. I thought I was doing the right thing, but obviously I should have double checked with you that this was actually true. And I really do apologize. I wouldn't do the same thing again. I think I was just like really reacting in the moment. These two go, yeah, no, it wasn't right for you to do, but we accept your apology. We thought it was really sincere. Much like a Jen Shaw, they could just have said that for funsies and then gone on and talked about her behind her back. But these two go back to their room and they're like, that was a really sincere apology. Like, I really feel okay with Whitney right now. Sick. These two, meanwhile, are having a little shopping spree curated by Miss Jen Shaw. She put Heather on this blind date with this guy who ended up being really annoying and boring. So she's like, sorry, shopping spree, have fun. And they do seem to have fun. Heather seems super grateful, and after they're all done, they sit in these chairs and have a little chat. And Jen goes, Heather, if you weren't friends with Whitney, none of us would tolerate her. Okay, thought we were good, but okay. Heather's like, I thought you accepted her apology. What are you talking about? And Jen goes, no, ew. Heather, you're responsible for what Whitney does because she's your friend. Two grown adult women. We're not responsible for each other. What are you talking about? And Jen goes, if she wasn't your friend, I would have killed her and put her in a ditch in the lake behind her house. Okay, sick. What? And Heather's like, you accepted her apology. Why did you say that if you didn't mean it? And Jen was like, I don't know, I just wanted to. For you, Heather. They're done too. They go back to their rooms. Everyone is getting ready for dinner. These three are the first ones to arrive, and Meredith, from the get-go, decides we're gonna tell Jen we're okay with Whitney because she knew what happened with Mary and that was a mess. So they all sit down, and these two go, hey, Whitney apologized to us today. We thought it was really sincere, and we wanted to tell you that we are good with Whitney. If you are not, that's fine. We don't expect you to be, but we're fine with Whitney. Jen, goes off. She starts yelling at them for being stupid. Like, how could you accept her apology? She's just playing with you. She was talking behind your back, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, she gave us a really sincere apology and it looks like she really regrets doing it. So, you know, we accepted her apology. Obviously, people deserve second chances, Jen. She does not accept that. She keeps ranting and raving about how they can't be friends with Whitney. She sucks, blah, 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 blah. A very similar story. Meredith disengages from this conversation.
And don't do that to me, Meredith.
You guys can engage in this. I'm not engaging.
And she's walking out. Lisa's still trying to reason with Jen. Bad idea.
Rose is a better friend than me.
I don't think
Go
that.
ahead and think that.
I don't think
And as we're all walking towards the door, who walks in? Whitney, Heather. They're expecting, or I guess at least Whitney is expecting, good with her, good with her, good with her. Heather knows these two are not good, but otherwise, they weren't expecting to walk into a physical altercation because Jen comes out with her bodyguard behind her and she is pissed to the point where she's trying to get at Whitney. She pushes Heather. Heather's like, what did I do? Eventually, Jen gets just like pulled out by her bodyguard. It's a big deal, a big issue. And these four are just looking at each other like. So they decide to have a super secret post-dinner kiki at someone's hotel room. They all go to someone's hotel room, they sit in a little square, and they spill everything Jen's ever said about each other. Whitney, Heather, go, hey, Mare, yeah, Jen's talked about your marriage and how you're cheating on Seth and how you guys are separated for a month. Meredith goes, yeah, Jen's been saying you're a swinger, like Lisa said she would say. Then Meredith and Lisa go, before you guys showed up to dinner, it made it very clear that Jen was trying to get us to fight with you alongside her so we could gang up on you. And it was really weird. And everyone sort of realizes that's what Jen does with everyone. She's like, I will fight with Lisa. But to fight with Lisa, I want to take Whitney along with me. Or I want to fight with Meredith. And to fight with Meredith, I'll take Heather with me. Like, she wants to find little gangs to beat up other people with, or for other people to do her dirty work. At the end of the night, these three all say, I don't want to be friends with Jen anymore. She's a bad friend. I don't want to be around her anymore. Heather, poor sweet Heather, goes, I can fix her. I can fix her. She's just going through a hard time. I can fix her. Heather's very naive and very hopeful about Jen, which really is sad to watch. Everyone goes to sleep because early the next morning they have this meeting with this hippy dippy white lady, and she's gonna like therapize everyone. She's gonna burn sage and like use crystals and stuff. Like, she's that kind of girl. Whitney's also that kind of girl. That's why she would book something like this. The bus gets there. Lisa gets on, Meredith gets on, Whitney gets on. Whitney gets a call from Heather and is like, oh, I'm gonna be 15 minutes late. I'll just get on the next bus. Like, it'll be fine. So these three show up to their little hippy dippy thing and they're talking with the lady and everything is fine. And then the person at the front says, oh, you have two more guests. Heather shows up and Jen shows up. They both show up together. Turns out last night, post dinner kiki, Heather went to Jen's room and was like, hey girl, things are not looking good for you. And Jen's like, yeah, I hate how people misunderstand me and they're so mean and they can never take accountability. And Heather, bless her, goes, oh, that's not what's happening right now, girl. No. You are the one in the wrong, very, very obviously, and you need to apologize to people. And so they kind of plan to have Jen come to the thing tomorrow. But they're there. Doesn't matter now. They're there. The lady there decides she's going to stir the pot. So we play a game called Trust, Don't Trust. The game is just asking, raise your hand if you don't trust Lisa. Nobody raises their hand. Raise your hand if you don't trust Meredith. Nobody raises their hand. Raise your hand if you don't trust Whitney. Nobody raises their hand. Raise your hand if you don't trust Jen. I don't. Neither does anybody else. Everyone raises their hand because they do not trust Jen Shaw.
Who doesn't trust Jen? Raise your hand. Okay.
And for good reason, honestly. They all start telling her that they know. They know what she's been saying to everyone else. Oh, I know you've been saying you want me dead in a ditch, Jen. We know that you want us to gang up against Whitney, Jen. We know you've been talking about her marriage, Jen. And Heather's like, yeah, like, no, this was really messed up, Jen. Like, you pushed me last night. You shouldn't have, like, gotten in a physical altercation with me over nothing. Jen's like, as Jen does. And we move on to our last person, definitely not least, my girl Heather. Raise your hand if you don't trust Heather. Jen Shaw apparently doesn't trust Heather. Heather is livid. She's like, girl, what? There's no chance you just said that. But yeah, Jen Shaw said, well, you were mean to me today and you said you didn't trust me, so of course I don't trust you. And Heather goes, you don't trust me? You don't trust me? Real? I am embarrassingly loyal to you. I look pathetic in front of everyone else because I keep clinging on to the fact that maybe you're a good person, but you keep treating me so poorly in front of everyone. You pushed me last night. You pushed me. I didn't do anything to you, and you pushed me. And we've seen stuff like that this whole time. At the end of the 1920s party, Heather is somehow at fault. Like, this is just the things that Heather goes through, and she runs after Jen every time she runs away. It's like a thing. It's really, really bad. So Heather goes off on Jen, rightfully so, and Jen's just like, but you said you didn't trust me. The thing ends. Everyone now, including Heather, has decided Jen is not a good friend. We don't want to be friends with her. We go home. And before our big finale event, we have one person out of the 5 remaining who talks to Jen Shaw. Is it Meredith? Definitely not. Whitney? Nope. Mary? Nope. Plus is Lisa and Heather. Heather, who has been with Jen for years and years and years, despite everything she does, and Lisa. Lisa. It's not Heather. It's Lisa. Lisa calls Jen and is like, hey girl, you want to have lunch? They go and have lunch, and Lisa's like, you poor thing, everyone was so mean to you. I'm so sorry. I participated. I was peer pressured. Blah, 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 blah. Like we talked about before, there is some social clout to being friends with Jen. And also, since Jen is so Jen, it's sometimes nice to get the protection of being Jen's friend, or at least for her to not immediately target you first. That's my idea of why Lisa was doing that, because she's pathetic. Because she just sucks. She just sucks. I don't like her. So Lisa is officially on Jen's good side because she's the only one who's ever talked to her since the Las Vegas thing. But we're fast approaching our finale event, and that is the opening of the second location of Beauty Lab and Laser. Throughout this whole season, we've been seeing construction of the second location, and Heather is very clearly very, very proud of herself, as she should be. She's worked really hard, and this is not something that she thought she could ever do. So this is really important to her. They're having a launch party, and as part of the invitations list, everyone who is a frequent user of Beauty Lab is invited. Jen loves a Beauty Lab trip, so she's invited, but Heather's really conflicted. She's like, if Jen does show up, then we have to talk about the thing, and that might ruin my name. If Jen doesn't show up, then it's just another example of her not showing up for me and not supporting me, which for Heather is like really big. This event is really important to her, but also her friendship with Jen is really important to her. And I think she would love if Jen just showed up and was apologetic, but she doesn't really think that's going to happen. We get to the day of the event. Lisa shows up, Meredith shows up, Mary shows up, Whitney shows up, Heather obviously shows up, and Jen shows up. Before anyone talks to Jen, Lisa and Meredith have a little conversation, and Meredith finds out that Lisa went to lunch with Jen, and Meredith's like, you're kind of a hypocrite, girl. Like, what are you... That's so weird. Jen goes up to Meredith first and says, oh, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have talked about your family or your marriage. That wasn't appropriate of me. I would never want to hurt you. I love you, blah, 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 blah. Meredith goes, thanks for the apology. I accept it. I will not be your friend, though. You can say right now that you won't talk about my family or my marriage. I don't believe you, though, because your actions don't follow your words. I'm having a rough time right now. I need to protect my peace. I don't want to be your friend right now, but maybe in the future. In her talking head, Jen goes, oh my God, like, I've always been so supportive. And we're like, are we talking about the same Meredith Marks? Like, girl. But out loud, she goes, I totally get it. You have to do what's right for you and for your family. So, like, just let me know if you need anything. And in her talking head, she goes, I think this whole situation with Seth has made Meredith go a little... But then she finally does say, but I love Meredith and we've been friends for so long, and if she ever needed anything, I would obviously give it to her because I want to make sure she's okay. Fine. She walks away from Meredith and goes over to Heather, and she's like, Heather, I'm so proud of you. You've done such a great job with the second location. I'm so proud of you. Heather goes, girl, I don't like you right now. Like, you suck as a friend. You've made me look embarrassing. You've made me look pathetic for how much friendship I've given you, despite the fact that you treat me so poorly. Jen responds in classic Jen fashion with, you're not listening to me. I feel so sad and you're being so mean to me and you didn't trust me. Blah, blah, blah. And Heather goes, I'm being mean to you? You hit me. And then you said you didn't trust me. Like, girl, what are we on about? You're making me look pathetic and I don't want to be your friend. You're an awful friend right now. And then Jen goes, you know what? You're right. I haven't shown up for you. I've been a bad friend, but I love you so much, Heather. And then she goes around the room because everyone else has congregated because this is the finale. She goes, I'm sorry, Lisa. I'm sorry, Meredith. I'm sorry, Mary. I'm sorry, Whitney. I'm sorry, Heather. Especially you, Heather. I would never want to hurt you. The assorted girls go, hey, but you have to, like, actually apologize for the specific things you've done. You can't just apologize as a blanket statement, like, at the end of the season, you know? And she goes, I just don't ever know when I'm doing something wrong, like hitting my friend. She didn't say the hitting her friend part, but But eventually she goes, yeah, you know what? I do suck as a friend. I'm gonna try and be better. And everyone's fine. And that is the finale of The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City season 1. Okay, let's just dead friendship. Really sad. I feel like that's more accurate. Oh, yeah. If you've ever seen The Bachelor or Love is Blind or The Real Housewives, you might know that a little while after the show stops airing, we get a reunion where all the women get to talk. The two big parts of the reunion that I think make it important is that, first of all, the girls get to watch the show, which means that they get to hear everything everyone was saying behind their backs. So Meredith gets confirmation that yes, Jen was telling everyone about her marriage and that she was sleeping with other people. Jen gets confirmation that yes, Mary does think that her aunt deserved to have her legs cut off. But apart from that, we also get to see what the cast is saying about the show. So any interviews with the press, any social media stuff, or any evidence people want to bring in is fair game for the reunion. Sometimes when you're watching an old reunion, it feels like there's some sort of elephant in the room that they're not telling you about, but you're supposed to know. And usually that's something one of these women have said in an interview or on social media, that we're supposed to be like, oh, I can't wait until they talk about how blah, blah, blah did blah, blah, blah. But we can wait because it already happened. So for the sake of making sense, I will not be telling things in the order that the reunion does because that would be hectic. I will be telling you things in order of different beefs that happened between different people. First, let's talk about the good time girl comment that never really got resolved, and there's always been that weird tension. Lisa starts out the conversation by telling everyone that she's been harassed on social media because everyone thinks she's mean for saying stuff about Heather. Heather retorts with, hey, you know, if everyone's saying it, maybe it's true. Lisa proceeds to pull out some printed out texts that basically say, hey, isn't this you saying in 2017, I'm so glad to finally meet you in person? How could we have known each other if we were meeting for the first time in 2017? Heather goes, we might not have ever met one-on-one in person, but we went to the same schools. We were both Mormon wives at the same time. We were in the same social circles. We had met each other before. Also, Heather drops a bombshell. In order to get on a Real Housewives show, you have to be selected by the producers, and there's a couple of ways to get there. I think there's an application process or an audition you can do, but also you can be recommended by someone else on the cast. Lisa was one of the first people on this cast for the first season, and she recommended someone here. Was it? Nope. Nope. Ding, 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 ding. Yeah, Lisa recommended Heather to the show. Lisa was telling Jen at the beginning of this season that she didn't know Heather at all. How could she have recommended Heather for the show in the first place? This pretty much trumps anything Lisa could possibly say because it is such an obvious fallacy in her argument. And Lisa just kind of devolves into calling Heather the real bully because Heather's actions have made Lisa seem like a bully when Heather's actually the one who's narrating it all. It doesn't make any sense. And I think Lisa's just like trying to reach for something because she's so obviously wrong. But also I am biased against Lisa because I do hate her guts. Also, side note, Heather got a text from Rihanna telling her, hey girl, like you're slaying, pop off. You're doing great. Me and Rihanna. Next, we've got Vagina Gate. I thought I made that up. I didn't. The show made it up. Jen apologizes to Meredith because she's like, hey, I didn't mean to show your kid my vagina. But also, it turns out that Jen has been posting a lot of homophobic coded things about Brooks and saying, oh, it's probably the first vagina he ever saw. He's probably scared of it. I promise I'm going to stop talking about your family. I won't talk about your kids or your marriage. Next, we have hospital smell / grandpa effer. At some point in the show, Jen said that she never said the grandpa effer comment, but she now has video evidence of her saying it. So she apologizes to Mary, says, hey, I shouldn't have said that. That was inappropriate and rude. And Mary goes, see, you say that now, but I've seen your tweets. And I'm going to show the tweets because they're really funny. But the one that's like Mary's grandpa and her then, Mary's grandpa and her now. Is really funny. It's really funny. We also get some more information on Mary's marriage, and I just need to tell you about it because it's one of my favorite parts of the show. So remember how Mary got married to Robert Sr. because her grandmother's will requested it? It wasn't in the will. It wasn't in an email. It wasn't in a text. It wasn't in a letter. It was nowhere. The only person that knew about this alleged marriage that was supposed to happen was Mary Cosby. But we have a few complications to this request as well. In Mary Cosby's church, formerly her grandmother's church, divorce is a taboo. You're not supposed to get divorced. However, Mary Cosby is not in her first marriage. Before Robert Sr., she was married to some other guy, and Mary Cosby's grandmother was the one officiating the ceremony. Meaning, if Mary Cosby's grandma was requesting Robert Sr. to marry Mary Cosby, then she would have had to get a divorce Or she was assuming that she would die after Mary's first husband. That doesn't make much sense because I think Mary did marry age appropriate that first time. Mary's actually closer in age to her step grandfather slash husband than Mary's grandma was to him, which is also weird. Also, Robert Sr. says he never got told that this was something that Mary's grandma wanted. Also, when Andy Cohen asks, Mary does admit that, yes, marrying Robert Sr. did mean that she got the inheritance, the property, the church from her grandma. So that's there if you want to think about it. And this marriage is obviously not for love. And even in the reunion, Mary makes sure we know about it because when Andy Cohen asks what Mary's type is, she says white guys. Her husband is black. And she said, oh, if I were to get married again or date again, it would be to white men. She also says you can't be in a marriage for 22 years and be happy, which is complicated because my parents are still married, and they will be married for 22 years in February. So as soon as I heard Mary say this, I called my mom and I was like, do you remember that Mary said this? She said no. And I was like, get your divorce papers ready. February, you're getting a divorce. Or at least you'll be miserable in your marriage. She looks like she doesn't want to touch her husband with a 10-foot pole. And even on the show, he is away on Zoom and not in person when they do their little husbands interview. And it turns out that he was away in Florida for ages and ages and ages during COVID because he got stuck. And Mary was so happy not to have to see him. It was so wild. One last miscellaneous thing. Jen proceeds to call everyone racist because they were calling her aggressive and violent. And she says, hey, if you call a brown girl aggressive and violent, that's a very different accusation than if you called Lisa Barlow aggressive and violent. And that is true. The whole angry black woman, angry woman of color is something that is a pervasive stereotype and really harmful to black and brown women. However, if you just look at Jen Shah's behavior, she is aggressive and violent. And it's really silly because this takes place in the middle of 2020 and everyone is using weird language that's obviously trying to make them seem anti-racist when a lot of them couldn't care less about black people probably. But at the end of the day, we all land on, yes, no, you are very much aggressive, Jen. You just are. So what? I've told you this big long story of a season, and I've probably told you it in the amount of time it would take to actually watch this season. Don't I usually have some sort of message at the end of these? Yeah. I could tell you about how harmful it is to pin women against each other for our entertainment. I could tell you about any of these women's controversies and why they can be harmful. I could give you a more in-depth look into the Mormon church if I really wanted to. I could talk about Andy Cohen and Bravo making money off of women fighting and how Andy Cohen's job is literally just to aggravate these women for him to make more money because drama pays. I could talk about reality television as a whole and how it's sort of dystopian to watch real people do real things. I could talk about any of that, and maybe I will one day, but I'm not going to today. I love this show. I love The Real Housewives just as a franchise. I kind of love reality television, and I know it's bad, and I know it's probably problematic, but it's just one of my things, and I ruin everything for everybody. I make everything overthought, and it's probably bad, and it's probably annoying, but I can't ruin this for myself. If you want to watch the show, please watch the show. If you don't, that's also okay. If you want me to talk about a different season or a different show entirely, please ask. I'll do it, probably. And if you're curious about any of these girlies or anything that happens in the show, please comment, please subscribe, please like. I liked making this. This is my fourth time filming this now. So yeah, like, subscribe, comment. This took me forever and a half. Love you, bye. Okay, have you made it to my mid-credit sequence? I did my makeup today with Huda Beauty. Love Miss Huda. Our fellow Egyptian queens need to stand together, and I don't mean Cleopatra, I mean me and Huda Beauty. I hope one day on the Egyptian American wiki page, it's me and Huda Beauty, and we're like the girl bosses. I'm gonna make it happen. I don't know how. You guys comment, like, subscribe to make it happen. This is, this like holographic shade on the inside is moon matter or moon dust or moon magic. Also guys, I'm so tired. I want to sit down. I filmed the longest part of this video twice and I filmed this entire video multiple times. I'm so tired of it. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm excited to edit because at least I can sit down. Editing Sarah here. I'm so glad to be done with it too. I was not excited to edit. It's Done. Yay! Everyone clap. But yeah, do you like my wall? All of this has been hiding behind Miranda. Not Sings. Okay.